Hello again. We're turning into quite the regular YouTubers here as we're back with the third video in our 30th anniversary series of videos, looking at the history of Kar-Tainer. We've already looked at some of the key projects that put us on the map within this field. For example, SKD moves to China, Hawaii, US East Coast moves, Volkswagen Golf exports from South Africa, among others. But we also wanted to do one dedicated talk on the equipment solutions that we have had, exploring how they have developed over the years to turn into the external loaded cassette-based system that we are known for today. As usual, Richard is here with me. So, Richard, why don't you get us started and tell us about the first systems that Kar-Tainer had in operations?
Well, the initial system that Kar-Tainer was actually born with was a ramp, a portable, what we called a portable ramp system that was actually erected inside the container. So, I mean, and that's something similar that other people are still doing today. But this is where you actually have to drive the vehicle inside the container. So the first vehicle is driven in reverse, and it has to be lashed down, and then you actually erect the ramp over the car.
Yeah, quite a rudimentary system, I would say, and probably not too far off from what you see some of these shippers are doing still today, especially for these second-hand car moves where they don't really care if the car is damaged or not when it arrives destination. However, for Kar-Tainer, once we started getting into these big OEM contracts, we found a need to move away from this initial system we had. And you've told me a story once of you meeting with Matson Shipping in the US for these Hawaii moves that we eventually got into. A meeting which eventually ended with you in a bar somewhere drawing on some napkins, which ultimately was the start for us moving away from this portable rampway system and onto the external loaded solutions that we're still using today. Could you retell this story for me?
Well, I certainly can, because it did eventually finish with the Hawaiian trade business that we did. But I had been approached by Matson, and I went across there and did a very big. I had a meeting at about 8, first thing in the morning, about 9 o'clock, in their conference room, and I did a big presentation, which I thought went unbelievably well. But it was based on our portable ramp system, because that's all we had at that time. And I did this presentation to them. Everything went great, and they asked me to wait outside, and they had it. I came back in, and they basically told me, no, that's not what we want.
Yeah, it's never straightforward when you're dealing with specialized solutions that we do at Kar-Tainer, right? But I guess in the end, you don't have any choice but to listen to the customer, right?
I went back to it was like 11 o'clock in the morning by the time all this had transpired. And I went back to the hotel I was staying at, and I stuck myself at the end of a bar and did what one does do in a bar for the next 12 hours. But what I did is I started to play with the idea, because they told me basically what they want. We don't want all the time. We don't want the labor. The labor here, stevedore labor for loading vehicles on the West Coast, is extremely expensive. We don't want to do it that way. We want this to be a much more automated system. And on a napkin, I ended up drawing this cassette system that would accommodate 2 vehicles. 4 months later, I went back to Matson and did the same presentation again and got the response that I wanted to get the first time. But yeah, it was a long 12 hours in that bar, but it was fruitful. And as my wife said, I should have actually kept that napkin, because that was something that sort of helped this company get started.
Exactly. New business, a new product, how all good stories should come to an end, I guess. So this system, which we just discussed, was a double unit, external loaded cassette-based system, which required quite a big forklift to operate, right? However, almost simultaneously to this product being developed, we were also developing a different product for another project we were getting in on, Volkswagen Golfs being exported from South Africa to Germany. How was the exact timeline between these two different development stages for these two products?
I mean, they were very close together because the BMW project that we started, I mean, the Volkswagen Golf project that we started in South Africa was a very similar time to that double unit. And we had devised the double unit in the US where I was living at the time. And very quickly we had the offshoot of it was to put them onto a single cassette. And we did that, you know, because our golf project started, I'd say late 96, 97. So it was almost going hand in hand, but we realized that, you know, that the specialized double unit was not something that would work so well, you know, in that South African environment. But it was the same principle. It was to be able to pre-stage, be self-supporting, and to be able to load outside the container.
Yeah, so basically we had to make the total weight of the loaded cassette lighter, thus going for a single unit cassette, which meant that.
And that meant that we could lift it with a 5 or 6 ton, 7-ton forklift, and these things are readily available at ports and in depots around the world.
Right, yeah. It also has to make sense from an operating perspective, right? And I guess that's much what we managed to do by changing to a single unit system. At least when you see compared to other systems you see on the market today, that many of them are still stuck on this two unit rack cassette system, which, you know, eventually makes it impossible to fully do the vehicle prep and loading external of the container. And this loading and unloading work instead has to be done, you know, either at the container door or slightly inside of the container. So yeah, I guess we found the best way to do it, right? Anyways, if we look back at our first anniversary talk, we discussed the very first OEM project Kar-Tainer had, which was the Volkswagen Jetta SKD cars going to China. So what I'm getting at is we've not only had different CBU systems, but we've also had different loading systems for SKD vehicles. Would you mind walking me through that?
Sure. I mean, the equipment that we used for the Volkswagen move to China was, if you like, our first generation of that. Volkswagen were wanting us to make it non-returnable. So it was to be a disposable item. So the first sort of designs of it were quite flimsy. It was something that was going to last one trip and they were going to throw it away. And it didn't have a big base. We actually loaded it by having it on a very small roller system and pushed it into a container. It wasn't something that was sustainable in that a forklift could pick it right up and load it in. So that only came later. That type of SKD thing. And we had the idea, once we got into the Volkswagen Golf and the BMW 3 Series projects, and we started to talk SKD again, is why don't we use the same bases as we do? Because it achieves the same objective, which is loading outside, pre-staging, and just lifting it up and putting it into the container. So that was sort of the background of how the SKD had the same base unit as the FBU unit. It just makes the product more generic. You know, you come to the end of a project, you can utilize that equipment in another project, perhaps SKD or CBU, because then it all depends on the way that you either attach or you drive the vehicle on.
Exactly, and that is pretty much where we stand today, right? So to summarize, we started off with this portable rampway system before developing the first SKD system that was used by Volkswagen for their Jetta KD to China. Our CBU solutions then branched out into two separate products, both external loaded cassette solutions, but one being a double unit, the other being a single unit system. Whereas the single unit system is the one we still use today for our CBU moves. Then this external loaded single unit system also inspired us to go the same direction for our SKD solutions, and our two product lines, the CBU and SKD, have now kind of merged into one product line, a very generic product, which with very simple amendments to the product itself can be used to ship, either CBU cars or SKD cars. So, whereas, at least we feel that, or I feel that we have optimized the method of loading cars in containers in an OEM scenario, we're still doing continuous tweaks and improvements to our product, to optimize the design, streamline processes, make everything better. This is something we do all the time. And always, for whenever we have like a new customer, a new car model that's being shipped, we always go through like a personalization process for, for the individual model that we are shipping, to ensure that quality is at its peak, cars arrive without any damages, and the process is good for the guys doing the operations, and everything goes smoothly. So always a high focus on quality. At least that's my impression with you, Richard, and the rest of the team in Kar-Tainer. So to wrap up this session, why don't you talk a little bit about where we initially got our perspective on quality from?
Well, I think our whole concept of loading vehicles outside the container, the ideas came from the OEM, and in fact, it was a small Audi project we did a long time ago of a small number of A4s that we shipped from Europe to South Africa, and they were the ones that gave me a very, very large Audi quality book and stipulated, the distances that anything must be away from their vehicle inside a container. You weren't allowed to drive the vehicle inside the container. And that made us very, very aware of where the industry was going from a quality perspective. If you wanted to ship volumes of our new vehicles, you had to, provide this level of quality.
Yeah, exactly. And in an OEM scenario, it doesn't make sense to ship a car if you can't ship it there with a certainty that it's going to arrive damage-free, right? So how do we at Kar-Tainer ensure that?
There are sacrifices that have to be made to get that sort of quality, because, we will not go there and say that we can load 3 vehicles of this size if the clearances are going to be 50 millimeters, because we won't do it. Our quality standards, it's more important for us to get the vehicles there in one piece than it is to get them there squashed in. So, we will abide by those quality standards, and they've been entrenched in us by the OEMs from, quite some time ago.
Yeah, so carefulness and always putting quality first. A must for Kar-Tainer indeed. Were we not able to deliver on the quality expectations of our customers, I guess we wouldn't still be around today, would we? And we would definitely not be seeing, the record low damage rates that we see throughout all of our projects. Anyways, so that was a quick look at the different products that Kar-Tainer have had and how they have developed over the years. Development exactly from coming from listening to our customers, listening to your demands, your requirements, and how you need things to be done, and then for us to figure out how to do it. We do have other products to introduce and other stories to tell, but this will have to wait for another day. Richard, thanks a lot for joining me today. It's a pleasure as always to delve back into the past with you, and you and me will sit down soon to look at other stories from the Kar-Tainer's history. To the rest of you out there, if you have interest in any of our products, our history, interested to connect with us, reach out, get in touch, connect. We are here. Until next time, stay well, stay good, and stay in touch. Thank you.